Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. So happy to welcome to town and to welcome here President Tim Collins of Walsh University. Good morning.
Hi, Susie. How are you today?
Doing well, and thank you so much. I know you are a busy guy, just getting going with the school year and so forth. First of all, let's just get to know you a little bit. So where do you come from?
Well, so I'm arriving from Baltimore. I've just spent the last 14 years of my life at Johns Hopkins University in the Applied Physics Laboratory. And we are here for a 10-year run, if the university will have us that long. But we come having never lived in Ohio before. I do have children that are around us, so from the point of view of our 10 grandchildren, we're almost in the middle of them. So this is a perfect location. So we already fell in love with North Canton, and we hadn't even been here yet.
Oh, and there's so much to discover here. So hitting ground zero with all the grandchildren, how perfect is that?
Yeah.
That you're just in the middle of a radius to be able to visit with everyone, and they can come visit you.
Right. We have 4 of them that are out in western part of Ohio. We have 3 that are in Pittsburgh, and we have 3 that are in Texas, but they want to go back to Grand Rapids if we can't talk them into coming here.
Yeah, this is nice,
So
too.
my daughter-in-law is a physician, and I understand there's a physician shortage here in Canton, so we're talking to them about, boy, there'd be a great place to raise your family right here.
You can usually find work. That's right. There will always be sick people. Who came up with the 10-year run? Was that a personal goal?
There was a gentleman named Bill Bowen, and he was the president at Princeton, and he was a longtime member of the faculty, and he wrote a book called Lessons Learned. Just a remarkable, unbelievably accomplished man, and he had one time told me, and in his book he wrote that this is an 8 to 10 year opportunity if you want to be a university or a college president, because it takes just a little while to sort of get everything moving in the direction, and then you want to make sure that you live with your mistakes, and then once all that's done, it's time to give the organization fresh air. So for us, that works about right. This is my 3rd career, Susie. So my first career was in the military.
Wow, thank
and
you.
I spent 23 years in the United States Air Force flying airplanes. We moved 21 times in those 23 years. So it was a great opportunity for me to take care of the here and the now. So service, I do believe citizenship carries with it responsibilities and obligations, not just freedoms and privileges. So this was my way to give back. It was my way to take care of the here and now. And when I finished my military service, I landed at Johns Hopkins University. And in the applied physics lab, that was all about taking care of what our first responders and our military men and women, the equipment they need, the technology they need, because that's a place of world-class engineering. A lot of people know about the university from the medical side, and they don't really always know that we have world-class music there in the Peabody Institute. We have world-class engineering in the Applied Physics Laboratory. We have world-class foreign policy downtown with SAIS. So that was about taking care of the future for them. And this 3rd career for me, though, is about people. It's about building leaders. And if you're going to build leaders in the United States of America, you're going to do it on the campus of a college or a university. You can't name a business or an activity in the private sector or the public sector where the leadership has not had a university or college experience. There's some exceptions, but they're just that, the exception. So this is my opportunity to influence what America's going to need in the decades to come and the generations to come. So what appealed to me immediately about this career opportunity, this 3rd career opportunity, was an institution that was small enough that I can be in, hands-on, making a personal impact myself, as well as what I hope to be able to contribute to the institution.
Was this an epiphany that you had? Like, okay, chapter 3 is going to be higher education. How do you think you got led that direction?
Yeah, well, the divine providence.
Yes.
John Paul writes that with the hand of God involved, there are no coincidences. So
right.
About 10 years ago, Susie, I got a nudge that I needed to prepare myself for a different kind of opportunity. So I went back to school. I focused on higher education. I've been very interested in faith-based education, Catholic in particular, the Catholic domain, so I started working on that. 5 years ago, I came downstairs and said, Drenda, we have to sell the house. We're moving.
And that went over
And she said,
how well?
And we're moving where?
Where?
I said, well, I don't know yet, but we have to sell the house. So we did. We sold the house.
On faith.
On faith. And so we were living in a rental property for the last 5 years, just saying, well, when the good Lord is the opportunity, he'll let us know. This opportunity came up 3 days before Walsh closed out the search.
Oh, my.
So I'm told I was the last one that actually, sort of entered into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just saw divine sign one after the other walking us all the way through. And so when they graciously made the offer, we had been through our discernment process. When we have big decisions like that, the way I describe it is discerning it with faith above reason and faith below reason. So faith above reason is what we all do. We use the gift of reason to think about the pros and the cons, the pluses and the minuses, the advantages, the disadvantages, whatever our own thought process is. But then there's this faith below reason. What is your gut telling us? What is that interior voice? What is it that we're feeling like we should be doing? And for me, when I get a yes, yes, then I just do it because it's what I'm supposed to do. And that's based on this belief that's not just something I think about. I've lived it. I've felt it. I've seen it. When you're doing something that's the right thing for you, you're going to find happiness.
Yes.
And I frequently tell people, I said, think about the times you're most happy. I'm willing to bet, not even having met you, it's when you're doing something for someone else.
Always. That was always what we taught
happiness.
our kids. We're always happier when we're
Right.
thinking about someone else.
Right. So in the discernment, I got a yes for this opportunity,
Perfect.
like really fast. Drenda did the same.
She was on board.
She was totally on board when we came here to visit the campus and to meet some of the community. We independently sort of were taking in a lot. Of course, I never viewed it as a job interview. I had a job. I had a wonderful job. Johns Hopkins was wonderful.
Right.
I didn't need to go anywhere. I was an executive there for 14 years.
Yeah.
I was being as impactful as I've ever been. But there was this sense of peace. There was something there. And so at the end of it, kind of independently, I said, what do you think? And she said, there's a sense of peace here I've not felt other places.
Wow.
So when the call came, we just said yes.
That's
so we
it then.
stepped out in faith. Because we're in a rental property, so you just give them 30 days notice, you're gone.
Didn't have to sell a house.
Didn't have to sell a house.
Oh, my gosh. Doesn't God think of everything?
He does. He plans ahead.
He really does.
I'm sometimes not that good at it, but he does. But I think it's just the trick is to be open, to listen, to really listen, and then, take a chance. So we are stepping out in faith. We're not exactly sure what we're supposed to be doing here, but we're quite sure it's what we're supposed to be doing and that he's prepared us in ways already. I'm on day 79 today, and I only know that because I'm in the middle of a 100-day transition plan. I'm on this listening tour, which is just a very high-level way to say, I'm in search of the soul of the university. Mm-hmm. What are the capabilities, its desires, its wants, its needs, to try to understand really at a very basic gut level Walsh University so that I can be as impactful and as effective as I can be as an individual contributor, as well as what I need to do in my role as president. So I've already seen, even in just listening, that the Lord has prepared me in ways that I never would have known what to do with X, Y, or Z, but I have this experience that I can fall back on. I've been an executive for 22 years before I got here, so there's not a lot of learning curve. Mm-hmm. Or said another way, I can spend my time learning the institution, learning the community, learning the students, learning the people, and I don't have to worry so much about trying to learn a process.
Or how to manage. Right?
Or how to manage.
What did you know about Walsh while you were out of state? And what has surprised you now that you're really getting to know the soul, the heart and soul of the university?
So Walsh, I was not intimately familiar with. So I've been studying Catholic higher education for about a decade. I've been reading about it, writing about it. I have a website, CatholicHigherEd.com, CatholicHigherEd.com, a shameless plug on your show today.
Check it out.
But it is designed to help families and students who have already decided that this Catholic approach to higher education is what they're interested in. And once you make that decision, there's 225 of these institutions in the United States. So how do you really approach that and how to think about it? What should you look for? How can you tell what to look for? How do you make assessments on what you see, what you experience, what you feel, what you read? So the website and my research has been focused on helping families navigate that space. There's a tool on there. It's not to be subjective. They have to decide for themselves what's a good fit for the student. But at least it organizes their thinking on it. But in the course of all that research, I've come across Walsh. My son's sister-in-law is a graduate of Walsh.
Cool.
So a recent graduate, so I've sort of been able to see some of Walsh through her eyes. Mm-hmm. But I'd never been on the campus. I'd never really thought that much about it. And what I've found here, what surprised me the most is why don't more people know about Walsh? I've met people in Cleveland who didn't know about Walsh, but it's in a very unique situation in the domain of Catholic higher education, and it's just only known locally. I mean, 85% of our students are from Ohio. Mm-hmm. So said another way, only 15% are from Ohio, and there's 170 private, independent higher education institutions just in Pennsylvania and Ohio.
My goodness.
So there's a ton of them.
Yes.
So, people don't need to stand out if you're just sort of doing fine, but the country is about to go through a dramatic shift in higher education.
Why do you say that?
And they don't even see it coming. Mm-hmm. We do see it coming, and so we're planning for it. So what happened in 2008 when we went through the recession or, the dramatic economic shift?
Yes.
Young families came out of that and concluded that maybe they weren't as stable as they thought they were. Of course, we all think that we're strong and nothing can affect us. The fact of the matter is, we can break on a moment's notice, and we can talk about some of my experiences that have convinced me of that, just how fragile we are. But they stopped having children. So what's going to happen in the mid-2020s is there's not going to be 18-year-olds there at the rates there used to be. And then you add to that the economic realignment in the region with just the population loss. Like right here in Stark County, you may have been familiar, or your listeners may have heard about strengthening Stark County.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, of course, they've concluded, we're getting smaller, we're getting older, we're getting sicker. And so all that means people are leaving. So the government's just come out with recent data. And if you can imagine a color-coded map of the entire United States, and dark red is population loss of more than 15%. And then it sort of shades itself towards light blue, where life is good and you're gaining population. Mm-hmm. So basically from Indiana all the way, just go east, all the way up through the New England and up to Maine, that is the deepest, darkest red in the country. Wow. So we have population that's leaving. We have population that's not being replenished. We're in an institution ourselves where 85% are coming from that area. So said another way, if you're just going to be a local kind of nearly anything, you're probably not going to be around by the time we get to the end of the decade.
And we're talking about an industry, if you will, that always was recession-proof, because during hard times, during hard economic times, people thought, to better myself, I need to get a degree. And so people went to college. Yes. But that all changed, didn't it?
Well, it's changing. This is why I think it's a dramatic shift that we don't see coming. So this is Tim Collins' personal opinion, but I have some research to support this.
Yes.
I feel like there's a dampening effect in the country right now about whether or not we should be even going to college. So 20 years
ago... Where did
ago,
that come from?
Right. And I'll tell you where it came from. I'm not exactly sure, but some of it comes from the fact that the value proposition has been asked, and I don't think we've responded as an institution, that I think higher education is held in a place of privilege in our society because we see what the value of education has done to develop the country. But we've lost a sense of that importance, and no one is talking about it. We're talking about accessibility and affordability, and that comes into the conversation. But what's lost in the conversation is, yes, the cost of higher education has gone up, no doubt about it. But nobody wants to talk about what the government unfunded mandates have been levied on higher education. As an enterprise, we've tried to figure out how to absorb the cost for extra people to do compliance, extra people to do X, Y, and Z that the government's demanding that we do without telling us how to fund it. Well, if you're a private faith-based institution, you're doing that out of tuition. Tuition goes up. You add to that over the last decade, there's been very little change in government support in terms of state, federal, and local aid,
right,
or what they can do for student loans. So that's been held even. Cost has gone up. And then you add to all of that mix candidates in political leadership that want to talk about, well, maybe it should be free for everyone.
Right.
Well, if it should be free, then why would I pay? And maybe I should just wait or watch. Yeah. Of course, to most of that, I say, those that are speaking that, what did your kids do?
Yeah.
I think they almost all went to college or university. And then if that's not enough, Susie, it used to be 4 years was the expectation for college.
Right.
And then we settled into talking about, well, maybe 4 to 6 years. Now, in some fields, in the medical fields, in the engineering fields, it does take a little longer, but that's because it's such a uniquely high-skilled profession.
Correct.
It takes extra education.
Yes.
But now we're settling into 8-year graduation rates and are feeling like, well, that's okay. Well, if you're in college for 8 years and there's not government assistance, of course you're going to find a lot of debt. Of course you're going to find questions about cost. But that should not be conflated with the value of the experience. And that's what's lost in the conversation right now.
Such good insight. We need to take a short break. We're visiting with President Tim Collins of Walsh University. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.